Okay.
Because it just wasn't an area where you would have a rash of bike thieves just sitting around. It wasn't like it was at a convenience store or something like that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So they get we start getting a little nervous. We're like, Jesus, it's starting to get dark out. There's a lot of woods in this area right off the highway. So they call in the state police. And they come there with some dogs. They come there with a guy who's, the top search and rescue guy in the whole world.
Yeah.
Could find someone in the Appalachian Mountains if he was lost. Could find someone in the Himalayas. He's more qualified than a Sherpa, at least in his eyes. So he just came in, and he just got. Everyone was motivated. Everyone was working hard. We had people in the community, and he just came in so arrogant, and he just started barking orders, and he just kind of pissed everyone off, and he didn't really add to the equation there. He didn't really help. Because you want to know who helped? Who helped? A guy called, and he said to us, "You know something? You're looking for so-and-so, aren't you? I heard it on the scanner." Because I used to be his baseball coach, he said. I was his baseball coach last year. And he goes, he was the weirdest kid. He would just be at baseball practice, and he would disappear. He would just go into the woods, would be at baseball practice, and does anyone know where he went? I don't know. He just took off.
Just disappear.
And would disappear. He goes, the baseball coach goes, I bet, all right, he had an infatuation with boats. I bet he's at some boat yard. I just bet he's at a boat yard somewhere.
Wow.
And that's what he said.
That's a hunch,
That's
man.
what he
said.
That is
a hunch.
And what did they do? It was, I'm not sure how long it went on, but I believe it was later that night, the couple of towns away from us, and the kid could have walked to that town. It wasn't a long walk.
Okay.
Probably a couple of mile walk. And he walked, and he got on a boat that was on the docks. And he was on a boat, and the owner of the boat came back and said, "Who are you?" And he was just a kid sitting on the boat.
Holy Toledo. And the kid probably had no idea that the cops were looking for him.
No, but he was just a kid. I don't know. He was just, if he was your kid, you'd be worried about him because he would just be the kid who would wander.
Yeah.
He'd wander away. He wouldn't wander away like you, little Dave, on the scooter, right? A couple of streets down. He'd wander like 3 miles away.
Okay. Well, I might have done that given the opportunity.
So that's how that went down. And who found it? Who found the kid? It was one of the local cops who was kind of knew the boatyard. But did
the cop go to the boatyard, or did they?
Someone from the boat called the cops and said, "Hey, there's a kid on our boat." And then the cops went down there, but it's a small community.
But they were already looking. But they were already looking at the boat. They had already targeted the boatyards, or did they ignore the advice of the baseball coach?
I think we put that out there. We would have put that out there. And but yeah, he was found. And then he went on to have an illustrious career as a criminal.
He did.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. It was weird. You can look at kids, and I'll give a personal story. When I was 7 years old, I was in a summer camp. And there was like 30 kids in the summer camp. And there was like 4 counselors. So each counselor was responsible for, do the math, 7 kids.
Yeah.
But there was one kid in the summer camp that had his own counselor. And wherever that kid went, whether it's lunchtime, playing baseball, wherever he went, he had his own counselor. And as he grew up in life, from 7 years old, I remembered that kid. And as I grew up with him in high school and dealing with him in law enforcement, he was a knucklehead at 7. He was a knucklehead at 14. He was a criminal when he got into his late teens, and life just kind of spiraled out of control. People in law enforcement can look at young kids, and you just shake your head and you say, "Oh, this doesn't look good." And a lot of times they will live out their life, and when you dealt with them when they were a young kid, you could have predicted just some of the weird things that they did. They usually continue that on.
Yeah.
What's it? I think it's an old psychology thing. You pretty much, your identity is formed at around 15.
Yeah, something like that. Something like that. But I know that I did a study for a class that I was taking, and it was on predictors of juvenile. It was predictors of juvenile offenses, and they said one of them is that a kid who's a juvenile who has antisocial traits early is likely to going to have antisocial traits all the way through, and more likely to have more likely to be involved.
You want to know what just
further
popped up in my
offending.
head? I was just thinking of a story with the same kid. So this kid, I knew him at 7. I knew him through his whole life. This was probably 10 years ago, so he was around 47. It was a bad thunderstorm, middle of the summer. We got a call. The mother calls, says, my son's in the pool. There's a thunderstorm, a pool in the backyard.
Okay.
He was in the pool yelling and screaming, and he had like a 10-foot metal pole in his hand.
Okay.
And he was yelling.
He wanted to
die.
Yeah.
He wanted to someone. You ever seen, I think it was Caddyshack. The old guy was playing golf.
The priest.
Yeah, he was playing golf, and he got struck by lightning.
I don't think the heavy stuff is going to come down for quite some time.
Yeah, so I always used to tell the other cops, because I've known that kid since he was 7. He was fucking nuts at 7. 40 years later, he's still nuts.
Yeah, that's it happens. And I mean, I shouldn't say
it's sad. It's sad, but
it is sad.
Yeah.
It is sad. You hope to catch all these kids, but you're not going to. I mean, one thing that the history of the world has shown us is that you can't catch everybody.
Yeah, just think if they have got that young little Adolf kid back in the day. Just if they had got someone to notice that kid when he was out there, I don't know, fucking burning squirrels in the backyard. Someone would have figured something out, right?
Oh, we had a story. Never mind. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that story later on. But there's another one here. State police come in. You had a story about the man who barricaded himself in the house?
Oh yeah, okay, absolutely. Yeah, that was another one in this community. Everyone knew the guy. He was the guy in the community that would always harass the cops. He would follow. This was kind of before cell phones and before YouTube and all the social media. When nowadays people follow cops and they'll videotape them. This guy would follow cops home. He'd put signs on his car, fuck the pigs. So everyone knew this guy, and he was definitely a loose cannon. So we got a call one day from his parents that he was barricaded in his house with weapons, threatening to shoot people. And this kid literally had 100 weapons. He had gas masks. He had body armor. He had little gas bullets that he could shoot out of his shotgun. This kid was a military savant.
Yes, okay.
So
if I was his lawyer, I'd say he's a weapons collector.
He's a weapons collector.
A peaceful weapons collector. I should have been a. You
could have been a good lawyer.
I would have been a great lawyer.
So yeah, we all showed up. We established a perimeter, and we gained contact to the kid. They had a phone line. One of the cops knew him. One of the older cops knew the kid. That cop was on scene. We were a couple of houses down, not in direct line of the house. Yep. You would never go in a direct line where the kid was. So we had houses to the side. Yeah. Plus, if you decided to shoot straight out at you, so you clear all the houses in the area as you could, because it's a residential double-decker neighborhood. And everything was cool. Everything was fine. The area was secure, and the local agency, the outside agency, came in, and they just started fucking with everything, closing down the perimeter, moving the command center, and it just turned into a shit show. Ultimately, the kid was taken out of the house. They negotiated, and he came out of the house with his hands up, and they took him down and everything like that. But it was one of those things where this agency wanted to get it over with. They just wanted to get it over with. We got to get it over with.
Yeah.
You didn't have to get it over with. As long as it's not getting any worse, just try to
as long as it's not escalating, it's de-escalating.
Just wait them out and see what happens. But they didn't want to do that, so they came in there and they started getting all antsy, yelling and screaming, moving people here, pulling local guys off, putting their men up. It created that was one of the tipping points with that agency, and it just created a really bad vibe with that agency. And a lot of times you don't want to call those agencies back. You don't, even though sometimes they're helpful. Other times they're not always. You're not
going to say what agency that is, are you?
No, I'm not going to say it. No.
Fine. We got another audio I want to listen to. This is a little bit different, but it comes to us from the Andy Griffith Show as well.
What a great! They were two great crime fighters. Those two.
They were great crime fighters.
And Barney.
They were, and in this case, two helpful old ladies. This goes to your idea you look for people in the community who are going to be helpful. So these two helpful old ladies provide information about some Mayberry residents who are illegally selling moonshine. Who would think that's illegal? But it is. They've got to sell their story a little bit to Barney, Fife. And let's take a listen.
You know that still we've been suspecting one up at Hawks Point?
Yeah.
Well, I just come that close to knocking it over.
Now,
Yeah?
you come that close?
Yeah.
Well, what happened?
Well, I couldn't find it.
How'd you know that?
Well, because I seen Otis Campbell walking up the road towards Hawks Point. He seemed just fine. But about an hour later, I seen him coming back on that same road, and this time he was weaving and singing and throwing kisses to the world. Not being a lawman, I don't suppose that'd mean a whole lot to you.
What was that again, Miss Clearman?
I said we saw the still with our own eyes.
I believe that's closer than you was, Barney.
Well, it is if. Now, are you sure you really saw it?
Oh, yes. It was up on Council Flat. The man's name is Ben Sewell. He owns a potato farm about half a mile down Ash Road. He was wearing blue overalls, a brown felt hat, a red plaid shirt, and he was pouring and corking the bottles himself.
We can't go traipsing off on flimsy information like that.
Yeah, that was, you know what? One of what struck me about that story, at least initially, was Barney was so focused. Barney thought he had him. He goes, I saw the guy walking up the street. He was sober, and he came back drunk. So we concluded that, guess what? The still had to be up in that area. But the two old, you ever heard Dave, you ever heard the two old ladies? Who do you ask for help in the neighborhoods? And it's always the old ladies. The old ladies know everything. People who are at home all day, postmen, UPS drivers, landscapers, people who kind of know the dynamics of a neighborhood.
Yeah.
So these two old ladies, they had them dead to rights. But you want to know something, Dave? As a cop, sometimes the helpful witness, and in this case, sometimes a helpful witness isn't always so helpful, because how that story went on the show was the old ladies were pretty much calling Andy and Barney all the time, and they were having all the other stills taken out of business because they wanted to have the racket on selling the moonshine. So they were ratting everyone out.
That's terrible. Those two old ladies.
The thing about ratting everyone out, there was also they had the town drunk Otis. They tried to, Andy and Barney tried to squeeze him for information, and he goes, I can't give you the information. Well, guess what? Nowadays, brother, you arrest someone, cops arrest someone with drugs.
Yeah.
Oh, they will squeal.
But that's a whole
They'll
difference.
squeal. Yeah.
So you're saying that Otis, the town drunk,
was very loyal. He was very loyal because he didn't want to give up his alcohol connection.
Yeah, they were loyal back then. They were loyal.
Nowadays, oh my God, they'll rat you out in a second.
Really, it's funny because people always say well, I've heard other cops say you can't get kids to say anything because nobody wants to be a rat. So, but you can if you can leverage them.
If you can leverage them, you can get some.
What was the leverage that they had with Otis? They had no leverage. He slept in the jail anyway. They didn't even lock the jail. You have a story about, and a similar story, right? About the home inspector?
Yeah, it's kind of similar. So there was a house for sale, as there's a house for sale in every community. So there was a house for sale, and one of the neighbors called the station and said, hey, there's a neighbor, old lady, she's home all day, and she says, hey, there's a house for sale next to me, and I see a guy climbing in the window. So they send a cop up there, like 9 or 10 in the morning. There's a for sale sign in the house, and the cop shows up, and there's a guy climbing out of the window. Cop goes, hey, what's going on? He goes, oh, guy's nice and calm, he looks the part. Oh, I'm the home inspector. He goes, the house is for sale. I'm doing the home inspection. They're looking to sell it in the next couple of days. I came here, and the real estate agent was supposed to leave the key under the mat. They didn't, so I just came in the front door. I came in the side window, did my home inspection, and I'm done.
Seems completely reasonable.
Yeah, and the cop goes, all right, sounds good to me. And he let the guy go.
Did the guy have like a big, did he have a big pillowcase over his shoulder with silverware in it?
So, he didn't really steal a lot. A couple of TVs, and back then the flat screen TVs were like very expensive. Nowadays you can have $10.
So he was coming out, wait.
He had already loaded his car up with a couple of things prior to that.
Okay.
So he was just coming out of the house with nothing when the cops saw him. And when the lady saw him. She didn't see him taking anything.
Yeah.
So in the cop's eyes, maybe his story was right, but